We call this Plan Commission meeting to order. This meeting has been given notice in accordance with Section 19.83 and 19.84 Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all members are present except for Chairman Walter and Commissioners Nilles and Williams. A motion would be in order to appoint a Chairman pro tem.
I move we appoint Trustee Baum as President Pro Tem.
Second that.
A motion has been made and seconded to appoint Trustee Baum as Chairman Pro Tem. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 3, public input and public appearance. Please be advised that per 19.84 parent 2, that information and comment will be received from the public. It is the policy of this municipality that public input be limited to 3 minutes. We do have the stop clock going. Per person with a time extension granted at the discretion of the chairperson. Be advised that there may be limited discussion of the information received, but no action will be taken. Is there anyone here to public information? Anybody like to speak? Anyone to speak? No comments? Okay. Seeing none, then we'll move on to the approval of the minutes.
I move approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us on to new business. Am I allowed to make a motion as President Pro Tem? Can we have a motion to move item C up to number 1?
We move item C to place of item A.
Okay.
Second that.
First item on the agenda will be Lemberg Electric, agent for St. John United Church for Christ, property owner, North 104, West 14181, Donges Bay Road, sign review and action. We vote on the motion? I'm sorry. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Unopposed. Motion carries. Item C is first. Do I have to read it again? Okay. Director Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. St. John's Church of Christ on Donges Bay Road is seeking approval of a new monument ground sign for their property. The proposed sign is just over 56 square feet, single-sided aluminum cabinet with LED internal lighting for the upper portion and an electronic message center in the middle, all mounted on a masonry base. The proposal includes landscaping that meets the code requirement around the base. The location that's proposed, a little bit of a twist in that because of the zoning regulations for electronic message centers that require them to be located no closer than 150 feet to a residential district, the sign has to be set back further from the property line than was originally intended. In fact, the church went to the Board of Zoning Appeals. They filed an appeal seeking a variance to reduce the setback from 150 feet to 120 feet in order to move the sign closer to the road and still maintain a setback from the residential district, which is actually across the street on the north side of Donges Bay Road. And the Board of Zoning Appeals denied that variance request. So the sign has been moved back into the property 30 feet as shown on the screen to meet the code requirement for electronic message centers. There are a couple other requirements that were not met, including some information from the manufacturer indicating that the lighting levels can be adjusted and automatically in case the sign becomes non-operational, and also a user and maintenance agreement that's called for in the code to ensure code compliance for the actual use of the sign, how many seconds the sign is displayed and the flashing and all that. So with that, the staff recommendation is to approve the proposed monument sign with the electronic message center for the St. John United Church of Christ, subject to 4 conditions. We do have Zane Nichols here on behalf of Lemberg Electric. Zane, did you want to add anything or just respond to questions? Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioners, comments, questions, motions?
I'll move the approval subject to, was it 4 conditions?
Or conditions, yes.
Yes.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Is this sign now compliant with all of those electronic bulletin board sign requirements that were in the package? My path kind of froze up. Because I know it was 150 feet, so it was moved back to be compliant with 150 feet from from a residential zoning area.
Correct.
So was there anything beyond that I don't know?
Some manufacturer information about the performance characteristics of the sign, that sort of thing. And then also the maintenance agreement. Essentially, it's a couple of paragraphs of information we need from the church contact person, and wherein they basically say we abide by, we'll follow the zoning regulations in terms of the operation of the sign. And here's the person you need to contact if you have any questions or issues.
So was it just the missing 30 feet that had to go to the Board of Zoning?
Yeah, that was the only thing.
That was the only thing. And were there ever any complaints or anything with the sign up a bit north of there by Bethlehem Lutheran, I think, Church off of Bel Air in Fond du Lac? I know we have signs similar to that, I believe, there.
Yes, in fact, no, we haven't received any sign complaints. The only one, for that one in particular, the only sign complaint that I recall receiving concerns one on Pilgrim Road. I forget the name of the church, from an adjoining property owner down the road a bit.
I was actually contacted about that during this process, and why did they get to do it and we don't? My understanding on that one was they have an existing foundation that just fit the sign. So they weren't getting a new sign, they were getting a restoration of the existing sign.
Yes,
So they were allowed to breach this 150. And I had to explain to these people, no, you can't breach it. They were allowed to because their sign was in the existing place and it fit the sign. They built the sign to fit the foundation they had.
That's all I had.
That was up on Pilgrim.
I have a comment I want to make. It's the work here. There we go. I notice on the sign at Bethlehem Church, sometimes when I go that way off of Mequon Road, I go down 145, I guess it is, and I come by that church. If it's dusk or later, sometimes that church literally, that sign is so bright that it will almost blind you. So I know that there are circuits to control that. Is that part of this one? Is that what he was talking about? Okay, all right.
Please. Yes.
Okay.
Is about as smart as the AMC is. Lower its temperature, it's ambient light at night or at day, and it will up it at the night, so that when it does come nighttime or come dusk, it does darken itself, and it will have that capability, yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
So for reference, the church I'm referring to is Living Christ Lutheran Church on Pilgrim Road. And their sign is within the 150 feet of the property across Pilgrim Road. But they were building on their original foundation.
It's an update of an existing.
Yes. And we approved that somehow, some way. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you all, I appreciate it, have a good night, thank you.
Thank you.
are you going to drop that information off?
I will be.
All right, great. Thank you.
If there's no other adjustments to the schedule, then we will be back to item A, accurate survey and engineering agent for Bast Family Limited Partnership, property owner of West 204, North 13917 Goldendale Road, 2-lot extraterritorial plat review to divide the property. There will be action on this. Director Retzloff.
Yes, thank you. As you indicated, Accurate Surveying, represented by Don Toma here this evening, and the Bass Family Limited Partnership is requesting approval of a one-lot certified survey map to divide a 3.5 acre lot from approximately 29 acres located on Goldendale Road in the town of Germantown. The village of Germantown does exercise extraterritorial platting authority and has approval authority over certified survey maps or subdivision plats in the town of Germantown within 1,000 feet of the village boundary. In this case, the proposal to create it's 3.5 acres, net 3 acres after the right-of-way dedication for Goldendale Road meets the town's minimum requirements for their zoning. And that's all that is required. We only enforce the land division component of it. And so they're dedicating the right of way for Goldendale Road, which was a village requirement. And with that, the staff is recommending approval, subject to one condition, and it has to do with the village's engineer surveying consultant who reviewed the proposal and has some technical comments in their April 11th review memo. Unfortunately, some of those are not requirements that staff is recommending, specifically the additional right-of-way dedication for Cedar Lane. If you look at the graphic, Cedar Lane runs east-west, and it's just off the screen or on the right-hand side of the screen. It goes off to the east. There is a small section of unimproved right-of-way on the west side of Fond du Lac Avenue. It doesn't go all the way to Goldendale Road. And staff is recommending that we not require the right-of-way dedication in that instance. The topography there is really rough. It's not a good spot to have a short section of road that frankly probably will never be improved, since the other portions of it are in the town. And they did not want to require the dedication. They don't want to improve the road. So staff is recommending that we not require the dedication of additional right-of-way for
And
Cedar Lane.
that is the one condition?
Yeah, that one condition is all technical issues and plan corrections identified in the April 11th letter be addressed and reflected in the CSM, except the following: no right-of-way dedication is required, and the interim village clerk name for signature purposes is Angel Rettler and not Deanna.
Commissioners? Comments? Recommendations?
I'll move the one lot certified surveyed map, subject to the one condition. Do we need to clarify that the no right-of-way dedication is for Cedar Lane's extension? I didn't read Public Works Department's consulting engineers report that carefully.
It's there though, I think, isn't it? Item
Is
1A.
it clear enough that that is what you were talking about, Jeff?
It is to me and to Don, I'm sure. But if you want to add that in there, just to specify no right-of-way dedication for Cedar Lane, that's fine.
I'll add that to the motion, that no right-of-way dedication is required for Cedar Lane.
Correct.
That is an amendment to, okay, we have an amendment to the approval. Is there a second to the amendment? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
All opposed? None. The amendment is approved. Back to the original motion. We have a motion to approve as presented. We don't. Okay, we need a motion to approve.
Guess that's
To the
right.
condition, so.
Well, then I'll move that we approve. But you did say that.
Yeah, I amended it in my motion, so I
Okay,
think. I
well,
need a
I'll,
second
I'll,
flavor.
I'll move that we approve the one lot survey map, with the one condition.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to approve with one condition. All in favor, or any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, say aye.
All right,
Opposed? No one is opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We are on to item B. MSI General Agent for Mold Makers Investments LLC, property owner of MSG Manufacturing at West 188 North 11707 Maple Road. Site plan review for a 118,652 square feet Innovation Center addition. There will be action on this item. Director Retzlaff.
Thank you. MGS Manufacturing is requesting approval of site development and building plans for their latest campus improvement to add a innovation center, approximately 118,000 square feet, just over 95,000 square feet, the first floor footprint with a second floor office. As indicated in the application materials, the Innovation Center will include about 51,000 square feet of manufacturing area, just under 23,000 square feet of warehouse, and about 44,000 square feet of office space divided between the first and the second floors. The architecture, actually here, might as well show this, the existing site. If you recall, over the last 5 years or so, MGS has made a series of improvements, essentially beginning on the left side of the where the molding building is located. They did some interior enhancements there. They had a small addition. And then a few years ago, they had the warehouse addition in the middle. And at that time, they indicated to us that they were going to be coming back eventually with an addition on the east side of the warehouse that would connect the warehouse and the tooling building in the northeast corner of the property. And that's where we are today. The proposal to connect the buildings and expand the campus again by about 118,000 square feet. This graphic shows the first floor plan and the second floor plan, all of which were included in your packets. Renderings for the proposed building, looking down from the northeast towards the building. 30-foot precast concrete panels with texturing, couple of different types of texturing on the material. And I believe you call that feature in the front, is that a curtain wall or curtain screen?
Inside the picture frame,
Yeah,
the corner picture frame? Yeah, it's curtain wall.
that addition on the east elevation. And then we can click through these if need be. An issue that is typically brought up, rooftop mechanicals. They provided this graphic that shows rooftop mechanicals proposed on the Innovation Center addition setback from the east elevation edge, enough that by way of the sightline diagrams that they have provided, those rooftop units would not be visible from Maple Road. And that graphic is shown here. You probably see it better in your packet. They provided the sightline diagrams from 3 different vantage points along Maple Road, looking toward the building, the Innovation Center. Landscape plan, minimal landscaping on the east elevation around the foundation. And if you recall the site, they've got a significant row of street trees along Maple that have been there for a number of years that are pretty mature at this point. The foundation plantings again along the east elevation. Staff comments, mentioned the rooftop mechanicals and the sightline diagrams. With that, I don't see a need to include a condition requiring any screening. Public Works had some technical issues in an April 6th memorandum that will need to be revised or addressed in revised plans prior to issuance of any building permits. And there was one comment I mentioned to the applicant this evening that was not in the staff report, something I had missed. The village forester had indicated that he was recommending some different trees be included to promote tree diversity on the site. He was suggesting substitutions for 3 celebration maples to replace those with a London plane tree, a Kentucky coffee tree, and a tulip tree. If you are so inclined, if you could include those substitutions in your conditions of approval in your motion, that would be great. With that, the staff recommendation is to approve the site development and building plans for the MGS Innovation Center expansion, subject to 6 conditions. We do have John Kutz with MSI and Andrea Hunley with MSI here to respond to questions that you might have.
Thank you. Commissioners, comments, questions, motions?
I will move that we approve for the sake of starting discussion, that we approve the motion on the site development building plans for the 118,000 square foot innovation addition.
With
The
these,
6 conditions,
Conditions.
not including the recommendation that Director Retzloff made.
okay, thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Would we like to discuss Planner Director Retzloff's landscaping request? Mr. Leszewski.
I agree with it. The village, we got too many maples. I mean, diversity would be great because you see like the ashes get wiped out. Now is it the, what is it, the Colorado spruce or something? They're getting
Now being
devastated.
wiped out, yeah.
And so the more diversity we have, the better, because you look across the village, it's one maple after another after another. The autumn fantasy, what is it, the autumn blaze? I can't, there's a million types, but we don't need more susceptibility to something like the Dutch elm disease
Sure.
attacking the maples. So I'm for it. I would make a motion that, or amend
Make a motion,
that, yes, that we
add a 6th, 7th condition.
add a 7th condition to substitute the maples for the aforementioned trees, the Kentucky coffee tree, the tulip tree, and I forgot the 3rd one, Jeff,
A London plane tree.
plane tree.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No one opposed. Motion carries to add the 7th amendment. Further discussion, back to the original motion. Further discussion. Mr. Leszewski.
Question, I believe the maximum impervious surface is 75% of the lot. Are we pretty close to, are they pretty close to that here? I mean, it looks like it's mostly fully developed, but it's hard to tell when.
Yeah, the maximum is 80% in the M1 district. And I don't have the figure off the top of my head, but it's close. I think they're in the 70%. Maybe John can find that real quick.
That comment was that their lot coverage is just over 65%. You weren't at the microphone, nobody could hear you, so no, we're fine for now. Okay, further discussion. Okay, Jeff, if you could go back to that image of the corner, that one there. My thought is this building is already dated. This, what I call the corner frame, it is so overdone in this environment everywhere. You go down I-94, that's all you see is this corner frame. It's everywhere. As an architectural review board, will we have something on there I'd like to see something different on that as opposed to the standard corner frame that everybody is doing. Just my thought. If anybody wants to further discuss that, happy to have a discussion about it.
I don't believe we have one of these in the village right now.
We don't, but you go a mile down the road and there's 20 of them.
Okay.
So. Any further discussion?
So
Yes.
I'm not schooled in the ways of the architectural world, but
Mhm.
specifically, is it the way it's boxed out? Is it the
This,
curtain wall? I
it's this big, I look at the screen over there, the big brown frame that outlines the window where the MSG is, a big black brown frame that's around that wraps the corner. That is like 2020 architecture. Everybody is doing it. This building is dated already because that is what everybody's putting on buildings now. And it's really, for me, it's gotten really tiresome already. And like I say, if you go down I-94 towards Chicago, you'll see 30 or 40 of them. Haribo, brand new. They got a huge red one on their building. Everybody's got this. So, just my comment. If you would like to come up and respond, yes, I'll acknowledge you. Yes. Although I would say, nobody else has said a word about it, so you might not want to say anything.
Yeah, good point.
So why don't you hold off for a minute?
Sure, I can do that.
Any further discussion?
Well, unless we have something to, we have a suggestion.
No, I'm just voicing my, I just have an opinion about this building and I won't.
I hate to say this, kind of arouse your ire.
That's fine.
for one, I'm sorry,
No.
I for one would be really interested in what the applicant has to say about the architecture
Okay.
design of the building. Because again, my background is a banker, but I love to, like, when I read an appraisal, say, okay, I'm gonna guess the date of this building by its architecture. Usually it come with a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if somebody wants to be typecast by that or not, but I'd love to hear what the applicant has to say about that.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, we'll go to the applicant if you want to comment on my comments, their comments.
Yeah, no problem. John Coots with MSI General. I also have Andrea Hunley, the architect that designed the building, with me tonight as well. I just wanted to add, MGS is a global company. They've grown considerably since starting in Germantown. They have locations throughout the world now. And actually in one of the pictures, there's 8 flags showing the 8 countries where they have locations. And so this was designed with considerable input from their team on what they wanted it to look like, as this will be their global headquarters where they're bringing in clients and partners from all over the world to Germantown, Wisconsin. So certainly understand the comments and opinions on the architecture, but it was designed with a certain look in mind based on a lot of their global locations and how they wanted this particular site to look for that perspective. So I just wanted to add that so you had some additional perspective on the why behind the architecture that you see.
Okay, thank you very much. Further discussion now that you've heard from the applicant. Okay, we have a motion to approve. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Correct? Correct. Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations on your further expansion. Next item on the agenda, we've already done item C. We will go on to item D. Tom Wetterow, agent for Homestead Transfer and Storage LLC, property owner of North 128 West 20563 Holy Hill Road. Site plan review for a 7,200 square foot accessory building. There is an action item. Director Retzlaff.
Thank you. Troy Wetterow, agent for Homestead Transfer and Storage, the property owner, and Wetterow Homestead, the trucking transportation business that operates from the property since 1982, I would add. is seeking approval of site development building plans for a small accessory storage building on the site, just under 6 acres in size, as shown on the screen. 60 by 120. It's a metal pole building that is intended to match the existing buildings on the property in terms of the type of materials and the color scheme. It ultimately is going to require just some minimal landscaping, not landscaping, grading, if you will, to provide some swales to run any runoff from the building location across the pavement to the west to an existing retention basin that's located on the west side of the existing asphalt. Even though the building is relatively small in size, the village does have a fairly recent requirement for any new or additional impervious area over 5,000 square feet are requiring a green infrastructure stormwater management plan consistent with MMSD requirements and regulations. That has not been completed at this point. That has been included as a condition of approval as recommended by the village engineer. Here's the graphics that were included in the application that show the metal pole building and the color scheme. As I mentioned, the village engineer had some comments in their April 4th memo concerning the need for green infrastructure and a assigned site plan. Inspection services indicated that because it is a commercial plan or commercial building in an industrial zoning district, it will require state-approved commercial plans as part of the building permitting process. With that, the staff recommendation is to approve the site development and building plans for the 60 by 120 storage building for Wetterau Homestead Transfer property located on Holy Hill Road, subject to 2 conditions. Troy, did you have anything you wanted to add or respond to?
Hi, Troy Wetterell. I did meet with Troy, Senior Project Manager from RE Smith this morning, and they're developing a plan to make sure that the stormwater retention pond that was done some 20 years ago will take care of any runoff on a current building that's going up. They're doing calculations on roof asphalt to make sure that this square footage is going to be enough to take the pond that's existing there.
Okay, so that would then, if we get the information, that complies with one of your 2 conditions.
Yes.
Okay, satisfies one of your 2 conditions. Okay, anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, comments, questions, recommendations, motion.
I will move approval of the site development building plan as submitted with the 2 conditions provided by village staff.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Leszewski.
On PDF, I think it's page 219, there's the map, the location map. Is that the building laid out in that superimposed on that satellite view?
I do not recall it was shown on there.
There, is that not there now?
No.
No, this is just a fairly recent aerial photo of the
Oh,
property.
so it goes there.
Yeah, it goes up
Oh,
on the top edge. What I'm pointing out is it is on the northeast quadrant, the horizontal line at the bottom of the entrance drive. That's where the building will go.
Okay.
and that's set back, what, probably a few hundred yards? I mean, when I drive by there, it's
A long ways
a
back.
long way back.
That
A long way back from Holy Hill Road, yes.
Yeah, that horizontal line that it's up against is 300 feet, so your front driveway length is probably 500 feet.
You may recall many years ago, the property owner divided the corner property there into 3 separate parcels, this one being in the middle, including the outlot that serves as includes the existing driveway that goes to Holy Hill Road. The other 2 properties are also zoned M1 limited industrial. And to my understanding, they will remain vacant for quite a while.
Further questions, further comments? We have a motion to approve with the two conditions. No discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. It'll take us to item E, AVN Group 109 LLC, agent for Everett Friends and the Anton Bertram Friends Trust, property owners of 62.5 acres on Fond du Lac Avenue, north of Donges Bay Road. Plan Development District and site plan consultation for a proposed mixed-use residential and commercial development. This is on the agenda for discussion only. No action will be taken.
That's correct. It's a consultation. You may recall, we discussed this particular, or a version of this particular development back in November of 21, when we were discussing the Victory Center corridor land uses as part of the 2050 plan discussion. The property is approximately 65 acres in size. The proposal includes a mixed residential community comprised of market rate apartments, senior housing units, condominiums, a total of 594 total dwelling units across the property. On average is about a little over nine dwelling units per acre, along with 50,000 square feet of retail commercial. There's also some future school building and uses proposed, and also the intended use is to develop the property in a multiple phases, and I think that's included in the concept plan itself. There's this version of the plan is slightly different, has a little bit more additional commercial added to it. Frankly, right near the intersection on a property that is currently owned by the Village of Germantown, but it reflects the concept that's intended for the mixed-use residential development across the property. We discussed it back in November of 2021, and the Victory Center corridor, that the proposed mix of residential uses since the adoption of the plan would be allowed as a land use, along with commercial, which is a preferred land use in the Victory Center district. So the proposal would be consistent with the plan. Mixed use characteristics of the proposal dictate development under a planned development district, likely an RM3 multifamily as the basis that allows a maximum of 10 dwelling units per acre. And with that, I would invite Jeff Grenier and his group to come forward and provide additional information, respond to questions, wherever you want to do that.
Thanks, Jeff. That was a pretty good synopsis. I'm Jeff Grenier, architect. I'm working with the Friendses on relaying out their subdivision. I just want to reiterate a little bit. I mean, the last one that was brought up here like 3-4 years ago had a lot more, four-unit buildings, apartment style stuff. What we've done is we've transferred that to garden style ranches, zero lot line condominiums, and rentals that we can build as they sell instead of doing a full blown development from the get-go. We've done some work with some of the village trustees. They wanted to see more commercial on the corners, so we incorporated some of the village land with our land. Created they wanted a restaurant space on the corners, so that's what we did. Some of the bigger buildings would be mixed use. First floor would be commercial, and then 2 floors of garden style, either condominiums or rentals on that site over in the phase 3. But basically the first phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 would be all residential, condominiums, zero lot line. So we're just here to, get a census of what you guys think, and we'd like to move on and work with staff and work up with PDD and before they spend $50,000 on engineering and landscape plans and everything else. I'd like to see if you guys like the density and the style.
Okay, very good. Director Etzlaff.
Do you intend to develop the roads as public or private?
Roads would be public roads.
Public roads?
Yeah. The main
main-
roads, as you can see, that have the sidewalks would be public.
Okay.
The interior roads would be private. So the ones between the buildings and all the ones that don't have.
Might I say anything that appears to be curb and gutter with sidewalk would be a public road? Anything that appears to be just a drive lane is private?
Yep.
That'd be,
So down on the right, lower right, that's set up to be an extension to the north. Our goal is to put utilities along the railroad tracks, and so we can develop, so somebody can develop the land up to the north.
Mhm.
And it all gravity flows down there. So
So with regard to the public road, the length of the cul-de-sacs exceed those that are allowed under our subdivision regulations without there being secondary means of access. How do you address that?
well, the one on the north side would be temporary until the road goes through. And the one on the south side,
It's about 1,200 feet. The maximum is, and I think that's just under that.
So,
back to what point? 1,200 feet from the cul-de-sac back to,
to the intersection.
but you still have only one way out, is what I'm understanding.
This continues, that's a second way out.
do you own the land to the north?
No, but we have talked with them. Happen, by the time this ever gets built, I can see what would happen that way.
Okay, so that's a,
It's a no.
yeah, it's a comment, it's a concern that we have to address during our discussion. Okay. Director Etzlaff, anything further?
Could you provide access down to Donjas Bay?
Depending on the reconfiguration of the detention pond, we could.
Might I ask in response to that question, what is happening at the southern cul-de-sac? There looks like there's a drive lane to the parking lot to whatever's going on that southern property. Yes. That is that a drive lane? Is that a connection? What is that?
It is a connection. Everything that was designed on the school.
Yep.
I met with the school administrator prior to the one we have now. They were discussing all kinds of options on things they could do there, and I drew the buildings for them to say, hey, this is how they'd work. We had also looked at this 8,000 square foot building here. We had some commercial on there that would tie in with the school uses.
Okay.
All of this is something that we can't speak for at this time. It's just a concept that we had at the time, and I think we've always felt that we should be working with the school. And it's gonna change based on what they want.
Okay.
That's all I can say, because they were talking about a K-4 school there. And with the expansion that they're gonna have with their schools, it's something that they're gonna have to address. I have no idea what they're gonna do. And all we've done is said, we
Sure.
try to accommodate something. That is one reason why this road doesn't continue through, because a lot of this is pond area and could be used for play area and other things, and we didn't want a road to cut through there, like by.
Well, hold on a second. Do we need to give him a microphone? Because nobody at home is listening, is hearing this. So if you could.
I guess what we're trying to do is leave that area a little undeveloped at this time so we can work with the school to see what they might have. We're trying to incorporate our pond with theirs so they don't have to build one. And until those conversations happen, I can't fully design it, but that's a concept that we had at that time.
Okay.
And we haven't gone away from it. We just don't know where to go with it.
Okay.
So when will you have those conversations with the school district?
We've talked with them for several years. and
Not the current
Not
administration?
the current administrator I've talked to twice and shortly after he started and then a few months ago. And he doesn't have any direction from his board and he's very new. And he says, there's other options and I don't know what to do. I shouldn't say he didn't know what to do. He just says it's not on their agenda right now.
So you don't have any sort of handshake agreements or anything with the school district about these buildings and tying your uses in somehow?
We've made offers.
It's all speculative.
It's all speculative and how can you tell what the school's gonna do? It's just a matter, they have enough land there to do something, but not quite enough to do major items.
Well, I'm just thinking it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to rely on secondary access alternatives that really don't exist. And at this point we have no intention of them existing at all.
Well, I think a lot of this can happen in staff meetings and discuss things and go over all those details, because we aren't asking to develop that area. We're really starting the other area in maybe several years, but before we get down to that.
Yeah, but we're gonna need an overall general development plan for the whole property from which to work.
There it is.
But it has all these loose ends.
Jeff, what is the,
We're flying to Europe, but we don't have a hotel reservation yet.
So might I suggest we start with the 20,000 foot look at this? What does our 2050 plan have for the desired uses here?
The desired use is commercial. An acceptable use is residential,
Okay. So,
up to 10 units per acre. So arguably, what's proposed falls into that, allowable range, if you will, continuum of the 2050 plan for the Victory Center.
with commercial, what type of commercial were we envisioning?
More of a
Retail?
retail, neighborhood
Retail.
level commercial,
Retail.
service oriented. Certainly not big box or anything. I mean, as presented here, 20,000 square foot building, multi-tenant building likely.
Okay.
Although, as I mentioned earlier, the corner lot depicted here with the 20,000 square foot building, good part of that is owned by the Village of Germantown.
Yes.
Most of it's ours. 2.3 acres is ours. There's 1 acre that's the village's.
Okay,
And it's-
most of it's yours, but there's 1 acre of it.
There's 1 acre, and it's been on our drawing 20 years ago that we would try to develop something together. We need a conversation to go over what happens. We've met with Dean and Dean says, yeah, it's appropriate to tie that in with your property.
So earlier it was mentioned that there's been dealings with the village board. What does that mean? You've had other conversations and,
I've been to almost every 2050 plan and there's been some conversations there. We've been trying to get a hold of you and work out things with you since last December, once the 2050 plan was done, and
right?
that hasn't happened. You've been really busy because you don't have enough staff, and we've met with an engineer.
No, but we also wanted a plan that was different than what we saw in 21, because back then, didn't receive a well reception.
This is the
did it?
same plan that I've passed to several trustees and other people that I've talked with as we were going over the 2050 plan, except for what Dean asked us to do is put more commercial on. And that's the only thing we changed is put the 20,000 square foot building on the corner. That's the only thing we've changed since drawings that I've handed. It was a green drawing that I've handed some of those 2050 plans, and I passed it on to your office when we prepared that, and it was probably close to a year ago.
Right, and
That's-
it's not any different than the plan we saw in 21.
No, that's completely different. Well, that was an orange plan, and it was, in 21, it was something that we put together in 10 minutes because you asked me to make a presentation for the 2050 plan on what we plan to do. David had some comments on that, hey, there were some buildings thrown on there, and we had a couple of things there. Well, that was the first attempt that we switched where we took the B1 zoning out of there, because the southern 20 acres was all B1 zoning, and the northern 40 acre was elderly housing. That's when we started switching, because we didn't see that happening. So
So when I was reading this and preparing for it, yes, Director Retzloff, I looked at that previous orange plan as
Correct.
you, this plan is different from the orange plan in such that there are different buildings on it, different locations on it. However, it's mainly the same plan, just more buildings than what was originally proposed.
correct.
But as I read through the notes from the previous meetings, there were discussions about what is the appropriate use for this site. And that's where I would like the commission to step back and start at the 20,000 foot level. And what is the appropriate use for this area? I have some opinions. I'd like to hear from the board members if they have opinions on what is appropriate. Would you like me to just start the discussion, or would somebody else like to chime in?
I just feel like. What is the maximum depth of cul-de-sac? I know what they're saying from the intersection is 1,200 feet. Fire department, police are gonna look.
Yeah, that's how you typically measure it. I mean, it's 1,200 feet is the maximum. I mean, there's some variation, some latitude that the plan commission could grant, the board could grant through the PDD process. Typically, we look at things like potential for adjacent development and the extension of the road. Not that it would just keep going and continue the length of the cul-de-sac, but actually tie back into a major public street to provide a legitimate secondary means of access.
Well, if we approved it how it is based on the fact that maybe to the north someday and maybe to the south someday, something happens and it's twice the allowable depth, and then nothing happens.
I would focus you on Forest Heights subdivision, which has a large T that has, for my entire lifespan in this village, has exceeded the dead end condition. The understanding that I have been given throughout the years is Elm Lane was supposed to be connected through. And when we had the opportunity to connect Elm Lane through, all the residents came forward and said, oh no, we do not want any through traffic in our subdivision. We want to leave it as a dead end corridor. So this committee never connected that through and has left a violating condition in place. I have told all those residents, it's going to go through at some time.
Yeah, to your point, we have required right-of-way dedication along Elm Lane when the opportunity presents itself, and there's really only one missing link left of right-of-way, and that's a short section on the north side of Friedenfeld Park out to Country Air. So once that, presumably when that land is proposed for some development, right-of-way may be dedicated as part of that and complete that connection from Wasaki to Country Air. Whether or not the road is actually constructed all the way
Right.
across, that's another issue.
So I would further that discussion with, in that condition, it is single-family homes, sometimes on 3-acre lots. So they are spread out. So the chance of a fire going from house to house to house is lessened. When you look at this, and I got building 13, 14, and 15, looks like 10 feet apart from each other, fire could go right through there. And the fire department isn't going to park there. They're going to park at the intersection, the T. And then they're going to have to run hoses all the way down. So there's something different to look at in this condition, whether we want to accept that 1,200-foot excess or not. So further discussion.
I was having trouble with the different phases and what the street structure would look like if we did start, if these guys started phase 1A, assuming that 1B is either at the same time or close by. So you've got Arborville Road, Arbor Village Drive coming off of Fond du Lac. And then it ends up on the south side of Phase 1B, but no real access to Phase 1A. Not at least on a public street unless you run through the intersection, right, as Arbor Village Drive turns to the east.
So if you go to buildings 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, so you would be a long ways away from an intersection because there's no mark on Phase 1A to get access to Fond du Lac Avenue. There was on the earlier plan, but not on this one, at least that I see.
There is an access off the road there.
That is what there's intending is right at building 1.
Right.
It's not really illustrated clearly.
There is a line there.
There's a
Okay.
line there.
So the idea would be that if you started with Phase 1A, then would that be a loan for a while and would
You could
Arbor
build
Village
all
Drive
of
be
one
there?
A before you built one B.
And
Yes, okay.
1A is not built to Village Road standards. That was going to be a private road.
Yes.
So it is not acceptable for fire department traffic. Would that be a fair statement?
No, I think, I mean, obviously we have a lot of private streets, Blackstone Creek, for example, and apartment complexes that effectively have, drive lanes that aren't public road standard construction that the fire department can get through. So it's just a matter of making sure that the width and the access
That's
ways
why-
are sufficient.
That's why we have a little roundabout there for temporary. I mean, it's
So
just
that would be the end
for
of
now.
Phase 1A, yeah.
So, but
do
that
we
would go
know-
out, that would go out once B is in.
So if you do phase 1A is Arbor View, whatever that road is that
Arbor Village.
installed? Arbor Village Road, is that installed? Are the public roads installed day 1?
No, there would be nothing on A1.
Okay.
That's public.
So A1, no public roads get installed. All we have is ingress off of Fond du Lac.
And a
building-
cul-de-sac between building 10 and 4, right?
Yeah, 10 and 4. 10 and
4 is
16.
the one on the north.
Yeah, 10 and 4. You end at that cul-de-sac.
Okay, so that's similar. I'm thinking, what's the subdivision that's behind Barley Pop that we approved several years ago? Isn't that all private streets in there?
Yes, it is actually.
Village, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
those are
so
private.
There's a sign, private property at the entrance there.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And when you get in the middle, the area where they have like parking stalls, it's just the width of the travelway is adequate for
Okay.
emergency vehicle access.
You've got 2 ways in and out of there.
Yes.
So
we
it'd be
do.
interesting to see, I mean, is the fire department, we're just doing a review here. It would be interesting to see what they thought of the access to building 4,
So
you know?
can I back you up and go to the 20,000 foot level? What is the best use for this location? If the village is trying to stimulate business in the central business district and you are moving business out to this area, is that what we want to do, is stimulate retail components out here? Is that what the village wants to do? You would like to say something, sir?
I think Jeff and I have talked, I mean, this is neighborhood business, neighborhood resident, or neighborhood, you have your coffee shop, you have your stylist, maybe your restaurant. We aren't trying to take businesses from downtown and bring out here.
I mean, we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence with the smaller neighborhood retail commercial already with the coffee house at the corner. Hopefully they'll finish off their plan with the renovation of the restaurant tavern in the same location. I don't expect there to be a significant amount of commercial, but
But
do you think it's the type that would sort of,
you got a 20,000 square foot building there.
yeah?
I mean, that's significant.
Look at Phase 3 there.
Yeah, you got a 20,000 square foot building. You have a first floor commercial, 28,000 in phase 3. You got, call it 50,000 square foot of retail in this area. And we got stuff in the central business district. We got stuff on, County Line Road that has the 50,000 square feet that is vacant now. I'm concerned about the bigger picture is what do we really envision for this? Because in the last discussion, there was discussion about, industrial on here, because you're adjacent to the industrial.
Right.
Is this, and if you're talking multifamily, do we really want to put multifamily in a greenfield, or do we want to put multifamily closer to the central business district? These are the bigger picture items that I think about when I look at this site.
Well, certainly we want more rooftops down around Main Street. I mean, we really need that desperately. I guess the question is, to what extent does this have a negative impact on anything that might go on down there that we're going to try and encourage to do?
And then, if we're going down that road, senior living, where are we at with senior living in this community?
Yeah, could you explain what the senior living component is, which buildings?
It'd be,
36,
36.
33?
potentially 33, but 36 for sure.
How many square feet is that?
I don't know offhand. I can't
If
remember.
35 is 28,000 on the first floor, I'd say this is gonna be a 50,000 square foot
50,000,
building.
yeah.
Well, it says 192 units.
Yeah, 192
That's what I was looking
units.
for.
192 units. So. I mean, the reason building 35 has got first floor commercials, because after we spoke with the village president, he wanted more commercial, but that one would easily be able to be transferred into straight 2 or 3 story residential condo or apartment, depending on what the market rate is in 5 years when they get there.
You indicated that you had some sort of market information for what component or all of them?
There was a market study done many years ago, and I don't have that information. I know Everett does someplace, but.
Study, but a lot of the market study, a lot of the market study comes right from your 2050 plan. If you really look at what you said in there, is there's gonna be growth in Germantown with a certain population. And we feel that's one example where it's at. The other thing is this is growth meant to go as the community grows. And fill in as it needed. So your studies are saying that. Your studies are also saying you need higher density housing, and we're trying to accomplish that. So a lot of the market study is what you've been talking in public about, and we followed that.
And I would say I accept that argument. However,
We have more to do.
okay.
We're not disagreeing with that.
Yeah, I accept that argument. However, I look at the higher elevation. Is this the right place for that to be? If we're gonna get a high density multifamily development, do we want it out away from the central business district, or do we want that to be inclusive in the central business district? That is feedback that we should have discussion about. Questions, comments?
I mean, I guess I would feel more comfortable if I knew that there was some definitive and recent market study that suggested or indicated that the types of units that are proposed are what the village needs. I mean, suggesting that our 2050 plan that projects in broad brush strokes increases in population and translate that into we're going to need, 4-unit condominiums and market rate apartments. I guess that's a hope and a prayer. I'd like to see a little bit more market type information to support that.
And I have a problem with, we have a market study from many years ago. Many years ago, to me, is irrelevant. I need something that's up to date and recent. to justify. Um, uh, So if everybody, we're not gonna have further discussion on the broad picture of the appropriate use. Should this be single-family houses with light industrial next to it? If everybody's comfortable with the high density, then we can move on to a more refined discussion about it. When I look at the overall, let me go back to, I am not sold on all multifamily, all residential. I do not believe the commercial is the right, in this area is the right application. 50,000 square feet is way too dense for me. If you're talking about a coffee shop or a little restaurant, that's way smaller than 50,000 square feet. If you want to look at the big picture item on what's a better use for this, I would question whether industrial on the east side and some type of transitional housing between the single families and the industrial is the right mix on this property. I am concerned about the whole involvement of the school, unless I heard something from the school. And we are still working with them, trying to get input from them. But my last indication from them is they have no intention of doing anything. So I don't see anything happening on that school site. Chime in if you want, Director Retzloff or Commissioner.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about the school property or the desire for a 4K building or anything like that, other than what was sort of kicked around back in,
When this came before us again.
yeah.
Then if I go into the actual layout of it, it's just a bunch of buildings plopped down on the site. It doesn't tie into anything. It's not a cohesive design. One doesn't relate to the next, doesn't relate to the next. Your building 36 does not tie in any way to buildings 30 through 20. If I try and go north to south, nothing is cohesive, nothing is collaborative. Buildings 1 through 17 don't tie into anything. When I look at a master plan of this area, I would like everything to tie in, everything to be interconnected, everything to have rhyme or reason to it. And it's the same comment I made the last time we brought it through, is it's not connected. There's no connectivity to any of this. Yes, the road goes through there and connects everything, but a cohesive design, this is not. This is just a bunch of units put on the site. So when I look at a master plan for, how many acres was this? 60? 65 acres, I'd like to see a lot more interconnectivity to them. Why one connects with the other, why the other is important, and why, so I have problems with the overall layout.
Can I ask, with regard to stormwater management, is the two ponds that you show along the railroad, the east side of the property, have you done any sort of analysis to indicate that that's more than adequate for this entire site?
Last developer I talked to said you need 30% of the site as water detention.
This full site was approved with MMSD in the pond without the pond that you see in phase 4.
When?
In 2004, when it was approved, we had a developer's agreement.
19 years ago?
I'm telling you what was done.
Okay.
That was approved. We've got an engineer on board. He's done the calculations. He's added the other pond to it. He's informed me that he's calculated enough that we could cover the school property also based on that concept. Now, we haven't gone to full revision of the plan that was done in the past because we're trying to find a concept before we spend all this, because I was under the impression that this was getting pretty comfortable with enough people on what we were building here. And it's going to be built in phases, and there will be changes that can be made. As far as the commercial, it's easy to change that a little bit and change the building. As far as the layout of buildings, we weren't asked to make all the details of everything right away. We were just trying to get up here with a concept. I'm
Mhm.
basing this on input that I got from Dean the other day, a while back, and he just said, this is good enough to come up here and just start that conversation so we can go forward.
Yeah,
We're not trying to have
Yeah.
all the answers.
And I think we're having the conversation.
Yeah,
And-
so we got to that
Yeah.
point, and I appreciate that. And now all we're trying to do is get some more of your details on what you like, and then
Mm-hmm.
we will go and make a full presentation and make sure these things all tie in.
Yeah.
The only building we've really spent some time is the ones around the woods, where we're trying to get the entrances on one side and the exits on the other side, so everyone's got a patio to the woods, and,
Mhm.
that's what one building we've changed a lot because of comments that we've got. You want to really use the woods and the walking paths and things like that and tie into it. Each one has a balcony, they have a full basement, they have exposed basement on the lower level. They're decent sized places.
Mhm.
And we've got the drawings and we've done those things, but we haven't really presented that to everybody on that, but we want to get to that level
And
and revise it based on your feedback.
And after reviewing what we talked about in the minutes from the last meeting, the one thing that sticks out to me is comments that said, if a plan that worked was brought forward, people would accept it. I'm not sure this board or commission is accepting this as this is the plan that works. Whether that is because we don't like the layout, whether that's because we don't like the uses. Personally, I'm not sold on the uses. I'm not sold on a lot of this. And for me, it's going to be challenging for me to say, I bless it. So I'm going to be opposed to it for various reasons. I can go into many of them. But I think the biggest problem I have is whether I think this is the right use for this property. That's my biggest question. And it's more of a master plan of the village as what we envision this property should be. And I have a strong concern about this density this far away from the central business district. I would like all these people to be much closer to the central business district. This would be like us putting all this out at Holy Hill Road to support the businesses out there. It's too far out.
So Jeff, could you go phase by phase and just address the building height that you're anticipating for each of these phases? Like, for example, phase 1B, building number 6, it's listed at 72 units. Is that
That's the 3-story underground parking.
3-story? Okay.
Yeah, all the bigger buildings are 3-story underground parking. All the other ones are 2 stories. Except for like 36, that's probably a 2 or 3-story depending on.
That's why, could you just maybe go from left to right or right to left or phase by phase? Like phase 1A, buildings 1 through 4, those are 2 stories.
2 stories.
Through five.
Actually, they're ranches and 2 stories. So ranches on the ends, 2 stories in the middle. So like a 4 unit would have 2 ranches and 2 stories. And then the 6 units would have 2 ranches and 4 2 stories.
There's somebody online. I'm hearing something. I don't know what I'm hearing.
I hear somebody too.
There's somebody too.
Yeah. Am I supposed to be, I'm sorry, am I supposed to be paying attention to somebody else that I don't know about? Okay, please continue. I'm sorry about the interruption.
So basically 1 through all the way 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 are that basic setup of 2 stories in the middle, branches on the end, so we can have a variety of, they're 2 and 3 bedrooms. 16 and 17 are 8 units, I believe.
Yep.
And those are 2 stories. 41 through 49 are all ranches. And let's see here, all the middle ones, 18 through 32, those are all 1 and 2 story duplexes and ranches and kind of the same concepts as the first phase, 8, 9, and 10, 2 stories. The ones by the road, those are all 3 stories, 6, 13, 33, 36, 34 are all 3 stories underground parking.
Where's building 13?
13.
13 is
13
below
is down there at
phase
the bottom,
6,
right?
going towards the northern cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So building 6, 35, 36, 33, those are all 3 stories.
Right.
Underground parking.
Right.
And the building 35, first floor commercial, building 38, that's just a single story.
38, that's something that could be discussed with
Right.
whatever. I mean, that's just 20,000 square feet on the footprint and, when we were discussing it with Dean, I believe his name is, they wanted some type of a neighborhood restaurant. There wasn't something in the area, so that's kind of why we put that in there.
Can you talk, I'm gonna change the topic here. With our plan development regulations, there's a requirement for some sort of amenity that goes beyond the typical subdivision type development. Something that ordinarily or typically in the past has been something that the larger community can take advantage of as opposed to just the residents in there. Do you have such a thing?
7 is a community building with parking.
Would that be like a
A rec center.
retail sort of thing?
No, it would be like a community center for people to use.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Just residents of the community?
We've never talked about anybody but else, but I guess, most of the places that I've worked on, if people want to, pay for memberships or whatever, they can use
What about the trails that you show on here?
trails through the woods. And then,
Bike paths all the way down here, all the way up here, ice pack. These paths are, I actually built those years ago already. I got a bunch of walking paths. Our intention is, I think it comes out to about 13 acres. We add the cedar in the woods, they're trying to leave open to the public. There's a lot of people in this community that walk, that are in their businesses, that walk around the road. This
Fence
is
it all together.
I also have,
No,
this bike path could continue further north
if you take
through other properties.
this
And,
thing,
they are interested in continuing that same feature. And if you really wanted to, you could tie here and eventually get through and tie it back through behind the solid soccer fields. and
not
get all
create
the stuff
something, then I can do something.
I haven't had any of those conversations,
And
but I know.
connect all, it now connects together.
On there.
So this is intended to be a paved or
Yeah.
multi-use path,
Yeah.
6 feet or 5 or
I think they put them 8 feet these days.
8? Okay.
So the 8-foot bike path coming through there, there would be some, not all of it would be paved through the woods, just one to get you through. If depending on when other things happen here, that bike path would go this way and continue out that way rather than cut through the woods, but that can be.
Would that be something you would install up front in its entirety?
Talked about it. Also would like to have the bike paths here, way through the front, because we've got setback there so that we're getting people off of Highway 145. So I wouldn't make that just a 4-foot or 5-foot sidewalk. I would make that a bike path. And it should flow and eventually get down to the parks north of us. Downtown. But there's other ways to do it through other developments in the future. It's just, we don't control all those other developments, but I can see where some of that goes.
You had mentioned wanting to run utilities up along the railroad. It's my understanding from the Public Works Director that he's put a sewer line in along Fond du Lac Avenue, along the front of your project?
When the roundabout was here, we got the sewer to continue up here. So right now the sewer goes up to here. That's why we're starting with this phase, because the sewer will come down this way through here and can pick up all of this. That's why my intention is we can do this sewer down the road, but then we can start building those things so we can phase this in. It's what you can afford. If the village came along and said, hey, we should do the whole thing at one time and the village helped us on it, yeah, we could do a really nice, impressive job. We're looking at different options on to do it. The other sewer comes down here. It's designed dead ends basically right here before it gets to the railroad tracks. It used to have a lift station there when Waste Management Building was put in. But this sewer continues here, continues all the way through here, and up here it picks up all of this. And the engineers calculated this all out, and we know where the sewer goes from here. The village hasn't done anything to figure out how you pick up the other 60 acres north of us. If that ever gets developed, and I had my engineer go through, calculate out the levels. So the sewer can come through here, follow the railroad tracks, go kind of around the hill and pick up everything on another 35, 40 acres west of Country Air. The other alternative to get to all of those things is going underneath the tracks from the industrial park. That's the way it was planned out 30 years ago, but staff has changed and we haven't. So this is an alternative, and this is what they'd like to do. I met with the engineer the other day and kind of showed him, hey, here's the elevations, this is what we can do. We've done the work just so you had the information.
So you haven't talked to the current sewer folks about your intentions at this point?
Excuse me.
Your engineer. How the sewer could be done there.
Who's that? Because we don't have a village engineer.
Director of Public Works.
Okay.
Larry?
So I'm trying to keep him informed what we're doing periodically and trying to, not looking at just our property, I'm looking at how this affects things.
Yeah. So,
Reason they know some of these things. What was missing.
Okay.
And got two of the major property owners around there. Inform them what I'm trying to do because it affects their property.
Yeah.
Because I hate to put the sewer in, have it too small that can't.
Director Retzloff, can you go back to your aerial of the overall site? What is north of this? You don't have a really good image of what is north. The railroad track kind of curves around, so you only have a small area before the railroad track.
Property right here, 4-acre strip.
Yeah.
It's owned by, property to the north there is.
And the,
That's those craft.
Yeah.
Auction, so if you've ever been back there, he has all these antique sales. He owns all of that land, he also owns some land on the other side, tracks.
and there is a
Four of his siblings live in those houses along there.
and there's a significant drop off there, is there not? You go down a significant way, cross the railroad tracks, and you come back up to Mequon Road.
If you follow the sewer
Yep.
right along the tracks, you can keep it low enough. Avoid, you don't go over the top of that hill. You go kind of around that hill and then you come back and you pick up sewer back on this side. Danny Belkney's family. Some of the. So all that land can pick up with the sewer. The alternative, you come down here, you're gonna be about 55 feet underneath Country Air.
Yeah.
If you come this way around, you're going around the hill.
So I guess my question to the committee is, highest and best use for this property is multifamily way to go here? Is that what is best here, being that I got industrial to the east and I got a variety of stuff along Country Air and Fond du Lac Avenue? It's a hodgepodge area. There's just, everything is everywhere.
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean or need to be that way. I mean, you got industrial to the east of the railroad tracks, and then kind of, you got this vacant parcel, then you got single family housing to the west.
And some business.
And along Fond du Lac, and it's immediately along Fond du Lac, you got some kind of historic uses that when it was a, whatever, a state highway, or it still is, I believe, some other alternative uses, but I don't know, boy, you look at popping super high density right in there.
Yeah,
I struggle with that.
these are apartments you put in just a few, the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And that was a last result. We tried to put half a dozen different uses there and they couldn't get anything to fly in there. So we agreed to accept the apartments, the Hillstone apartments.
But those are, how many units do you have there total? Yeah, and we're talking 72 and 192, and I don't know, I look at this plan and say, I don't know how you could add anything more to it. And yeah, when you go back to the retail, of course, people are gonna go to Greenfield retail versus the village center. Same thing with the high density. So that's why, it kind of naturally attracts itself here. So yeah, you're almost creating a community within a community. I shouldn't say almost, you are right there. And the question is that what you want right there?
Or do you want an expansion of the industrial on the west side of the railroad track and then put a lower density of multifamily along Fond du Lac Avenue?
Different sub.
Yes.
I like how like around phase 6 and along the railroad tracks, that layout meanders, it looks nice, topographically, but then the rest of it just looks like
Doesn't have any
word units,
uniform.
segments of.
Doesn't have any purpose. It doesn't
Yeah.
have any meaning. It doesn't connect. It
Yeah.
doesn't tie together.
So
I think a good way to say it is you're just throwing as much stuff in there as it could possibly fit. I kind of think I'm agreeing with you, not sure of where you're going with the connectivity. But I just see it as separate blotches that don't mean anything to anything else.
Mm-hmm. And
Sorry, I think I interrupted.
no, that's
from my perspective, I would like to see an option of industrial along the railroad track, split in the center of the site and put a lower density of multifamily along Fond du Lac Avenue and break this up into two functions. I don't, just the density here is problematic for me.
Do you really think though that some component of industrial on this property works or will work?
I don't know.
I mean, we had
I
that-
don't know. That's where the
sort
market
of-
study goes in and the market study is many years old, so I don't know what would work here.
I think that'd be too close together. I think if you put industrial buildings on the east side, which I think is what you're talking about, and then you put multifamily or lower density, but multifamily on the west side, I think that would be objectionable to the residents. I don't know. Now, the kind of industrial we typically have in Germantown, not like we're over here running stamping machines and stuff.
No,
but
it's
still,
light industrial.
right.
I just don't see it working, frankly. I mean, when we looked at the Lannon Road County line,
Yep.
one of the many issues with that development was the fact that the industrial was proposed adjacent to the residential, and you had some component of industrial traffic running through the residential neighborhood effectively.
And the problem I saw of County Line and Lannon Road was, one, I had large industrial, they were talking 200, 300,000 square foot buildings backed up against a single family house.
That's kind of what you're talking about here.
No, I'm saying cut the site in half, north to south. And on the east side of it, you have light industrial, smaller units, much like the east end of the business park, which then backs up against single family housing over there. Over here, I would transition to the west with multifamily housing on the western half of this along Fond du Lac Avenue.
Oh, David, I tell you what, I think if multifamily works anywhere in Germantown, it would probably be here compared to most any place else. Every place else I see in Germantown with multifamily, I don't know, it just seems out of place. Here, there's enough non-family around this place that I don't think it'd gather too many objections. But I don't like the layout of this. I'm not giving you any constructive criticism. I just don't like it. If you put it up, you know, I drove by it every day. I don't know that I would object. I just don't like what I see here. That's all.
And that goes back to the original comment that if somebody said, I don't know who said it, if we saw a development that presented itself well, it could be approved.
Yeah,
This is
I
not
think
presenting
that's-
itself well.
That's probably said better.
So,
I mean, frankly, I can see some component of higher density residential closer to the intersection and closer to Fond du Lac Avenue with more lower density residential, maybe the 2 and 4 family stuff that's shown in the back. That
I,
makes some sense.
I don't see this as high-end housing.
No, not necessarily, no.
Not sandwiched between commercial, not, sandwiched between business and industrial. I don't see it as high end. It's not tying into a town center design where it's elevates itself to a higher level. I think this is modest.
Which frankly, the town center should be in the town center.
Yeah. So this becomes more housing for people that work in the area. And I'm lost on how this really functions.
I mean, that's kind of the design is it's probably the easiest way for working families now to, you know, you as an architect know, I mean, I designed buildings, houses that are millions of dollars, and I designed condos that are 275,000, and
Mhm.
they'll sell a lot faster here for the working family than they will, you know.
Okay,
and-
so that's,
I mean, in the layout, we can work with the
Yeah.
layout too. It's just a matter of, you know, the densities, you know, we came in with the density at 10
Yeah.
units per acre.
and what about senior living? Is that, how is that on our desirable, undesirable, acceptable,
It's an allowable use,
allowable use? It's a desirable use or it's an allowable?
allowable.
It's allowable.
I mean, the senior center stuff was from the past and
Yeah.
it's just a place, you know, holder for now. I mean, if, you know, in 5 years, when we work our way around, if there's no need for senior center, we could come in and do a new PDD and turn it into residential or whatever.
Okay,
Is there any requirement for any sort of green space minimums and in a development like this, or can it just be stacked like that?
Yeah, when we would have to create a plan development district for this. And we would work out what those minimums are. I mean, we would be creating that. I mean, it's difficult now to see. It would be nice if this were sort of color coded where you could see
Right.
the green area. I imagine there's a lot of green in between.
There is
The
a lot of
buildings.
green on here, but it's just if you, I mean, you have the whole woods and everything there and then all along the railroad tracks. So I would assume that as an overall development, we have no problem meeting the requirements.
This is a common courtyard, that's all green.
Yeah.
It's up there, kind of building spaced out more than a lot of other places.
Right. So
Behind all this, and there's a
So-
lot more green.
phase,
Woods is really the biggest green thing we're having.
yeah, phase 6, what is phase 6? Is it wetlands woods or is it premium woods?
Woods, I just put a phase in there, not that it's necessary, it's there now.
Yeah, I understand that, but
Now it's The only thing is when do we put the bike path in?
Yeah,
Maybe the bike path would be phase 6.
As far as when you develop, some people put the clubhouse in right away, so you gotta marking things, the
Yep.
bike paths would go in right away. As they're designing the bike paths, I haven't met with the person that's designing in the area, and I'd like to, because I see where it can go.
Yeah.
It's just a matter, we have to start having discussions, and I think it's gonna be one of the first things is the bike path that gets in there, because it's a nice
Yeah,
feature.
phase
Yeah, they-
6 might go away. We might put it in there after 50 units are built. We have to put
Yeah,
the bike
the-
paths in.
it's simply a question as to whether that is wetlands woods
There's no way.
or is it premium
It's
woods?
premium.
That's what I'm
It's all
trying to
right.
understand.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Can you tell us, are you going to be asking the village for some financial assistance on this?
I guess that's all part of negotiations. I mean, I don't know right offhand what would can be allowed. I mean, if there's, according to you, there's not any TIF, it's not in a TIF district. I don't know if there's any type of shared expenses, if we're gonna be putting in sewer to another area could be utilized for future. I guess that's a negotiation that we could do with a developers agreement with, PDD.
Okay. Yeah, I know we typically require developers to install utilities to the end of their property.
Mhm.
I think we've already installed the sewer from the intersection north to your main entryway
Right.
already. Um, So I don't know what else. I assume that your engineer who has all the information about stormwater and serving lands to the north, you're gonna get with our engineer or
Yeah,
public
once-
works
once-
director at some point.
Once we kind of get an idea of where we're going and, you know, if what we're doing here, and we can start having those meetings and fine tuning the plan a little bit and making things flow a little better, and maybe, you know, give you some designs for
Yeah.
different buildings so you can have a look at it.
That'd be nice to see, some building design, some site statistics that show percentages of open space and pervious area, that sort of thing, floor area ratios. I really think you need to come back next time with some definitive answer with regard to the school district situation.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, that was just put on there because of past discussions. That could go away. I mean, that stuff can potentially just be, you know, something that's handled differently. If it's a make or break, we can definitely work on the road, making another intersection. I mean, we can talk to our engineer to see if there's, you know, if there's a possibility of running that straight out to the south there. And then that basically gets rid of all the cul-de-sac problems.
yeah, that would be good, frankly, because I know you've got this cul-de-sac plan to the north, but when you look at that little bit of land that's inside the railroad to Country Air, all the frontage along Country Air is pretty much divided into home sites
Yeah.
where the lots are deep and they go back to the railroad. I don't see being able to, maybe you could extend something to serve a couple of lots in some of those backyards, but you're never gonna punch a road that's gonna come back all the way around parallel to the railroad to Country Air.
I guess it's all up for, you know, for talk if we can get an idea of, you know, and if we come out of the meeting and, you know, you guys want half to be industrial and the other half to be residential, I guess that's something that it's gonna be difficult to proceed without a lot discussion with everybody.
Okay. Any further discussion, any further comments from anybody?
I think if we can, give them as much direction as possible for potential changes, like some definitive answer with regard to the school district, some possible alternative for a secondary access or extension of that cul-de-sac to Donjas Bay would be helpful.
So I will simply spout off the top of my head as to my little sketch that I drew while we're sitting here. And I actually see a U-shaped roadway that has two access points to Fond du Lac Avenue. And you take your 36 unit senior facility, rotate that 90 degrees, take your green space sections that you talk about, rotate those 90 degrees so you get a nice green space that connects the senior living building through those green spaces all the way to phase 6. And then you can have the road on the east side of the building be the road that loops around. Then I have 2 points of ingress and egress, and it starts to align itself. It starts to tie everything together, and you can still get the buildings semicircular around phase 6. But between 16 and 17, that starts my LA of green space, which can tie over to building 36. I think there's a much better way to arrange all this stuff that ties it all together and makes it cohesive. If you're focused on multifamily at this density, that's the kind of thing I'd like to see as a more unified design. Jeff, if you want to call me offline, I can sketch stuff up and we can hammer stuff out back and forth. I personally am not sold on the large commercial aspect on it. 50,000 square feet is more than we need. I would drop the whole school altogether. Any relationship of the school to this property, I wouldn't even talk about it anymore until we get the school board to come forward and tell us about it. I would get your civil engineer to really look at this water detention area. It is far lower than what any civil engineer has told me that I have to plan for. What else can I tell you? I'll stop there. Anybody else?
I'll jump in. Another thing that's sort of troubling to me, although it's difficult because I don't have a building design, is both building 6 and 35. They're very long and they're parallel Fond du Lac Avenue. And unless there's some articulation in the building itself or some change in elevation, it's just gonna, all I can envision are these library type buildings, 3 stories lining Fond du Lac Avenue.
And my little sketch here, the buildings are much smaller. They can still be 3 stories, aligning Fond du Lac Avenue, defining the edge of this development, but not so large. Not so
Yeah.
smaller segment.
I mean, we, of course, came
Yeah.
here with the kettle all full. 'Cause
Yes.
We
Mhm.
want to show you what could go on this property. I mean, now if we work our way back, I mean, I've worked on many projects where we take a building like this and then we separate them by 30 feet and we put a courtyard in the middle and break them up. And then we still have our drive tunnel underneath them. And then all the parking connects, but you have an outdoor area in between and it breaks up the buildings and,
And
we
yeah,
can work with that.
recognizing it was a 3-story building with underground parking, you got to do a rooftop deck, if you will, garden space on top of the parking that goes through everything. So is it really a 3-story underground parking, or is it 2.5, 3 stories with parking in the backside with fronts on Fond du Lac Avenue? How it gets done is part of the question.
Right, and normally in a subdivision like this, when we work on it, we put a lot of off-street parking on. There's no off-street parking other than the units right now. We would have 2-3 stalls here, 2-3 stalls there for people to park for visitors and everything, so.
Yeah,
I can think of one more thing. It might be very helpful. Maybe I'm alone, but seems like with a lot of presentations, we've seen software today that can actually let you drive through the subdivisions or the
It's-
project.
too
We have
premature for
rendering-
that. Way too premature for that.
Well, it
Right.
might be, but it's difficult to really see this.
Yeah.
No, I use a really good
It's-
guy out of Madison and he does all my renderings for all of my big stuff. And once we get a little more defined, we
Okay.
can do a couple, 3
Well,
buildings.
that would
He can-
answer
he
the
can
green
do-
space thing to a
Yep.
degree. It would answer the question you had about driving down the road and seeing, is it massive or what it is?
It's just way too
Yeah,
premature.
I can see that.
At some point, we will require that, but until you get the layout finalized and yes, this is an acceptable layout, we're getting closer. Then we start doing massing models of just massing of it, and then you can do a fly through of the massing, but it's way too early for that. Further discussion?
I guess I'm just having a hard time with, like, I got on Fond du Lac Avenue where it all joins it. I don't think we echo your point. It's making a city inside of a city. I don't feel like that's gonna be the best use of the spot. I guess when I look at it, I see more of like almost, the back of Blackstone Creek subdivision, how it joins the industrial park. Like the industrial park of the high school is not pretty to look at, but they have a huge buffer in there of landscaping. And then as the subdivision drops and the industrial park raises, the berming gets higher and it's planted. So those people that are in their backyard, say looking to the west at Weissman's Automotive, aren't looking right at Weissman's Automotive. And so it could be done with more multifamily residential than 20,000 square foot buildings.
So you're talking on this image, putting a green space buffer along Fond du Lac Avenue as opposed to having buildings fronting Fond du Lac Avenue.
Yeah, just as the west edge of Blackstone Creek is along River Lane.
Yep. Okay.
I think it would be a softer look, and then I would like to see the 2 points of entry onto Fond du Lac Avenue, because I mean, if you get buried back in that court, I mean, you're quite a ways in there, and all you can do is make a U-turn and come out.
I'll agree with that. I do have a problem with the dead end nature of all this. To say that, well, someday we're gonna connect to the north. It's 30 years that Forest Heights has been and it still hasn't been connected,
Right.
so.
I mean, if we continue, if we use the phase 4 and we put a U-shaped road in, it'll meet all the criteria of
Yeah.
dead end road.
Yeah, if you came, yeah, I don't know if it's in front of 16 and 17 or behind 16 and 17, you can connect that up to Fond du Lac, and when you turn the senior center 90 degrees, you come across the front of there. There are 2 points, and that's your U.
Mhm.
That then your dead end cul-de-sac is a lot shorter.
Yeah, I mean, we would potentially put a square in there and have 2 cul-de-sacs come off of it.
So,
But you're right, I think we can take a look at it.
so, okay. Enough feedback?
I think. it's
Yes, sir.
good.
Just going to add, you've added a lot in the last few minutes. You had some good comments and they were helpful. I appreciate that. There are a lot of ways that we can tweak this. The entrance onto 145, the state dictated what we could do before. We have the one major one and there's another one off the other parcel by phase 5 that we can tie in and accomplish those things.
Mhm.
But I think some of your comments, we should be able to pick that up and clean this up a little bit. And we can definitely take things off that we've discussed with the school. That's not a problem.
Sure.
It's just a matter of, we're trying to be forthright and open, say, hey, think about the long term. But a lot of the stuff is easy to fix. And we've discussed it. It's just a matter, we had to get on the table to see.
Sure. Nope. We're here for feedback and comment. If you want to call me, we can talk about it through. Okay. All right. Okay, that is item E. We'll move on to item F, Village Germantown 2050 Comprehensive Plan Implementation and Action Steps for discussion only. Director Retzloff.
It was my intention to bring to you the 2 RFPs, one for the Holy Hill Gateway Freistadt District and the second for the Village Center. I do not have those completed, so I'm going to bring those at the next meeting on 2 weeks from now. I'll have a little bit more input from Brian, and we should be able to bring those to you for your review, and I'll get them to you in advance.
So no action on this, no postponement. We'll just
No,
talk about it next. Any questions, comments, and related to item F that you would like to know about? No questions, no comments? All right, then that will close item F. Anybody have any announcements? Next meeting will be 2 weeks from today at 6:30 again in this boardroom. I will adjourn the meeting at 8:23. if Lori will gavel us out, because she has access. Thank you very much. Thanks for attending. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in 2 weeks.